Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's episode I will be continuing to talk about light path expressions, but this time it will be a bit more technical because I will go into a shader script how to actually be more efficient in creating light path expressions, and I will be showing you how to set up light groups. It was requested, so what light groups are is you can have specific outputs per light, and you define those light groups on each light itself under AOV light group right here. On default, they have a default light group called default. So whenever you write something into an AOV, it will always be collecting all the lights at once. As you can see in my render on the left, I've got a pretty broken, beaten up stormtrooper. I don't have any shader work on it. It's all procedural on this guy. So I've added a bump map, some curvature, occlusion, all the fancy stuff. And if you want to see how I set up this scene, there is actually a scene setup tutorial as well on the channel. It's a previous video to this one. So be sure to check it out to see how I set up the shaders, how I set up the lighting, if you are interested to see how I did that. So continuing from the previous MtoA 516 episode, I showed you how to create light path expressions, right? So currently in my AOVs, I have nothing in here. So the first thing what I want to do is just create the default. Let's say we create the code AOV, and we put it to the right. And let's just change my render settings for a bit to be a bit faster. Let's just do 2, and for now let's see what we got. So if I check the code, we should see just the code layers. So currently in this guy we have all the lights, and I have 4 light sources. I've got key, fill, rim, and a kicker. So the kicker is the one on the left, rim is the nice rimmy light on the right, and then I've got a fill from kind of the right center, and then the main key light, which is filling the left side of the face. So on default, I don't think actually I can change the light path expressions on default AOVs. So what I'll be doing now is I'll just create another one called code custom or something. Code custom. Which should show up at the bottom. There we go. And it should also load it on the left. So this is the code custom, which should be the beauty. Let's see if it does load it, or nothing because the LPE is empty. So let's say I choose a code again, right, like this. And you can see now this should resemble the same LPE as or AOV like the code one. So it's a bit sluggish. Let's just change the resolution to be half, and we get more speed, and I can iterate faster. So this is now 50%. Alrighty, so let's just move the settings over. Okay, so now you can see I've got the AOVs at the bottom here in my outliner. And if I select the code, you can see the AOV has been added. And what I want to do now is I want to limit it to just one light source. So to do that, you would add the brackets, a smaller, bigger, hit L.enter, L.period, and you still get all the lights. So this just means lights and then any event after that. So this means all lights as well. So let's say I want to just isolate the key light. Currently, I haven't set any AOV light group. So just to be a simple tutorial, let's just call the light group key, and it does make sense for sure. So let's just call the light groups as the lights itself. So just renaming the groups like so, and then kicker like this. All right, so back to the AOV code custom. You can see I've added L dot or L and period. So how you do light groups, you just add a single quote. Like I just added 2, and then in the center, I'll just add the light which I want to isolate. So if I hit or type in key, hit enter, ideally we should see the key light appearing. So not entirely sure if I did it right. So it should show up, which is interesting. So it was just an update issue. So I just restarted the AOV the render session, and now you can see only the key light is being isolated. So let's say I wanted to do the kick light. I do that, and the kick light is being isolated. And this is how you would set up an AOV from an LPE based on the light group. So this would be my rim code, and this is how it works, right? So you can already see that this is a tedious process, especially if you have lots of lights, and especially if you want to make your comper happy and give him all the outputs per light. What you can also do, you can just give your comper, or if it's just actually for you, if you would have the RGBA, which would be the beauty pass, let's just see, they are penned, so that's not correct. So like this, if it's just C dot asterisk, this means the beauty pass, just whatever you got, put it in there. But if I now want to isolate a light, I just do the same thing, L dot period, and then let's say rim. And this would be now my beauty. So this is like code, diffuse, all the stuff is in here. So if I go to the key light, you can see that we can see actually everything. You see the metal, you see the code, and all this stuff is in that one pass. So now how would you do it for, let's just do an example for the beauty pass. So for now, just stop the render and let's just rename this guy to beauty underscore key, right? And now I'm not sure if I can actually just duplicate them. Obviously at the bottom it did not work because the name is still there, but let's just rename this one on the top, call this beauty underscore key as well, and let's try and see if I can hit Control D to update. I'm not sure if this will work. I don't think so. You see now the whole thing is broken. Okay, so let's just undo that. Now it appeared. It's a bit buggy, as you can see. But ideally, I just delete this. And now we've got a floating thing, which is, I guess, a broken issue. Anyways, so let's just add it again. Beauty key for one. Let's add another custom one. Call this beauty. Let's just do 2, right? Just to make your life easier, and it should be fairly straightforward. Anyways, so choosing the beauty LPE and do the same thing, bigger, smaller brackets, L period, single quotes, and just for this guy is rim, so we type in rim, we copy this expression, go to the key, paste the expression, and call this guy key. And let's just start the render and see what we get. So now we have a beauty key, which is that guy, and we have a beauty rim, which is this guy. So you can see just for creating 2 outputs per light, for 2 lights, you have to create those AOVs. So obviously what I'm going to explain now is how to set up a more automated way, and this would be using scripting, right? So from now on, you should be a bit more familiar with Python, how to code and all that stuff. So if you are familiar with Python, this should be fairly simple. If not, I won't go into detail what a class is or what object-oriented programming is and all that fancy stuff. I will just keep going, and if you don't understand this stuff, be sure to catch up somewhere else, how to code, how to make your life easier. This would be helpful for you in general as well. So the first thing what I want to do is import MtoA and PyMel, which is just easier than using mel command. So I'm using Python, not mel. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to first define an object, right? An AOV object. So this is something I just made up. It's just an AOV class. And what it is intended for is I can add properties to this class. And with those properties, what I can actually do is store different information. And this is what I'm going to set up right now. So I want to have a name and I want to have an LPE, which is both strings. So this is just my initializer for that object. And self.name is name, and self.lpe would be, in this case, LPE. So, and for now, this is all I want to do. So this is just a simple object which stores an LPE name and an AUV. So what I can do now, I can create an AUV object like this and just give it a name. So you can enter name equals, or you can just write in, let's say, diffuse, and the next one is the LPE, which is for now just a C. And if we create this, we get this object, right? And if I save this as my diffuse AUV and return, I can actually go diffuse AUV.LPE, and it will return me C, which is my name I just defined on top, right? So I think you see where I'm going with this. I need to create keys which define what an AUV is and what they are. So I have prepared something beforehand, obviously, but I'll try to, for now, type it out, or let's just see if I can pull. So some minor issues, but nothing too crazy. So I just had to restart quickly. Anyway, so I'm creating a list of keys. So I could just call this AUV keys, open my square brackets and close it, and give myself some space in them, right? So the first thing what I want to create is an AUV object. And as my initializer, I just want to, for now, just create a beauty pass. So let's call it beauty. And then the expression for the beauty is what I typed just now, is C dot asterisk, and then you do the same thing. You do the bigger, smaller brackets, and then L dot, and then single quotes, and then you would enter the light, right? For now, I will just leave it as L dot, because I will use a little helper script to just find those L dot values and then append some light groups for them. It will make sense in a bit. So let's just for now do one, right? Let's just start with AUV beauty and just leave it at that. So the next thing what I want to do is I want to gather all scene lights and query the light groups for them. So for this, I can use a simple command. It's like from the PyML library. So you can use also Maya commands or whatever. I just use PyML commands, and then I use ls, which is list, which is also a mel command, and I'm just listing types. I'm not sure if there's directly a MtoA command to get this, but I'm just using these things to list me the types of AI lights, area lights. I just have area lights. If you have more lights, obviously you can just append them. So just for the kicks, let's just add AI sky dome light as well. I think it's a capital D and a capital L as well. Like this. Okay, so this would list me all the types. Let's see if this works. If I run this typo, it's area light. And now you can see it's listing me sky dome light. Sorry, it's listing me 4 area lights, right? So this is what I want. And I just want to package this up in a nice little function just to make it a bit more organized. So let's create a function called get lights and just return this command. So whenever I run this function, it will return me all the scene lights or all the MtoA lights. Like this. And the next thing is I want to query the light groups, right? And to get that, I want to loop over each light. So for light in get lights, so that's the function I just created, and I just print light, and now you should actually see the lights, right? Fill, shape, key, all these lights. That's what I want. And if you don't know the attributes, you can actually do .list adder, I think, and it should print you all the attributes for each light. I know the attribute already, which is AI AOV. Because it's PyML, it's object oriented, so I can just use .get, and I should actually get a string return of default. And I just need to check if that is actually correct, because I thought I changed them all. Oh, because of the crash, I had to do this again. So That's unfortunate. Key, I had to rename them. So fill, rim, and you can already see it will help. Like if you do the, let's say you have to do it like every time again, like that's why scripting is so handy, right? So let's just run this, and now we should get all the light groups. Fill, key, kick, these are my light groups, right? So what I want to do now is I want to return those light groups, and I want to write them into a, let's say a list, right? So I create another function, def get light groups like this, and I just want to loop over them, and I just want to append them to a list. So let's just call this groups is an empty list, and then instead of printing it, I just say groups dot append and open this guy, close it, and then when the loop is done, I just want to return the groups object. So if I run this, execute, go to the bottom, and I just execute get light groups, it should return me a list of strings, which is what I want. So whenever I change a name, let's say call kicker instead, and I run this command again, it should update, and I should get kicker instead. So there we go. So this is now updated. So this is awesome. So now what I can do, I get all my light groups, and this, you can already see where I'm going with this. So whenever I have a light group, fill key, I want to update this little L dot thingy and want to append the single quote thing. So this is my goal for now. So what I want to do now is I want to loop over each light group. So for light group in get light groups, print. I always do these prints. Like if you're more confident, you don't need to do that. It's just helpful. You can see, okay, it's working, and let's go to the next step, right? So now comes the tricky part. So I want to create an AUV, and MtoA has built-in classes for this. So there, it's called an interface. So I'm just creating an interface variable, and I go to MtoA, and I will create this interface. So it's in AUVs. And then it's just called AUV capital. I hit Control Spacebar and it just auto completes. And then I'm just storing this this function into this variable. So I have now everything in interface. So an interface has some neat little features. So in here you can just do interface dot, and then it has add AUV. And all it needs to get is a name, and it will create that AUV. So for now, let's see, what do we want to add? Okay, let's just add the light group to the front. So if I add a string and add my curly brackets, what I can do now is hit dot format. It's just a different way of doing string interpolations, and just pass light group as the format object. And then I want to, for now as a test, do an underscore, another curly bracket, and this would be a string object, which is my AUV name. So if I run this, I should get now 4 AUVs. Let's run this and see if it created them, and it did. AUV fill beauty, key beauty, kicker beauty, rim beauty. So it definitely does work. So all I need to do now is add the light path expression and update the L dot syntax right here. So the next step would be to first store this. Whenever I create one, I want to store this AI node for this. And to do so, let's just store this guy as, I think it generates a scene AUV. Yeah, it's a scene AUV. So let's just store this in a scene AUV. Like this. And from there on, what I want to do, I want to create access node, which is a property of scene AUV. So let's just delete this guy. So if I run this, it should create the AUV. Oh, it did already. Okay. So scene AUV dot node should give me the node name. which it does, it's just a string. And from there on, I want to create an PyML object. So PMC dot PyNode, which will the input is a string, so the scene AOV.node returns a string, so I can just pass it on into the PyNode object, and it creates me a proper PyML Python object. So this would be AI AOV. This is just a name I use just to make my life easier. So this is stored right here, and now I can just easily access the attributes on that thing. So let's see what else I need to do. So AOV. All right, so this is now my object, and all I can do now is, I think if I go AI AOV dot light path expression dot set, I can just add any name in here, right? Let's see if this works. Set, and I select the node, and you can see it's updating in here. So all this is now nice and fancy, but I want to still need to update the L dot thingy. So there are several ways you can do this. You can just loop over the AOV keys and swap them out or whatever you want to do. I'm just used to object-oriented programming, so what I tend to do, I would just update my object node, my AOV object node, and I will just add a little function in here instead. So this would be, let's just call this add light group or whatever. So this would be in self, and then I want to pass in the light group name. And now what I want to do is I want to access the LPE, which I stored in the object, right? So let's say this is a string. So self.lpe is a string, and I want to replace certain objects. So I just type replace. It's a Python command for strings, and I'm looking for L dot. And I want to replace this with this kind of the same thing, L dot, but then I want to have single quotes, and I want to add the light group in here. So I do curly brackets, and you can see there is a conflict now because of all the quotes. So Python supports single and double quotes, so I use instead double quotes for the outside one, and then L dot single quote, curly brackets, and then on the outside I just add format, and I'll add my light group object. Okay, so this should actually update it now. Currently it's not doing anything with it, but what I want to do is I want to store this in another class property. So let's just call this LPE group, and at first it's just none. When you initialize it, you don't have that, right? So, and when you add a light group, we want to store this. So self.lpe group is equal to whatever we just did beforehand, and this should actually do the trick. So if I initialize this class again, it's updating it. And I think, let's just think quickly. So I need to add the light group. I get the light group from my for loop. I have the object. So let's just do, I also need to loop over the keys, right? So currently I'm not looping over the AOV key. So that's something we need to do first. So for AOV key, in my AOV keys, print AOV key. So just that you see what we're doing here. So this should just AOV keys. I guess I did not execute this. Let's just have a quick look. Why does this not work? Oh, this does work. I think I just did not initialize that what is it? List. So yeah, so now it's actually looping over them, and now I could just print AOV.name and it should give me beauty, which it does. Okay, so I'm looping over them, and then I just want to, because for each AOV I want to create those light groups, right? So I'm just indenting this so it's actually two loops in one. So if I would just hit print instead of creating the scene, let's just do it on the fly. So I'm deleting this, and now for each key and for each light group, I want to create an AUV, and I want to create the expression and all that stuff. So the AUV key is an object of this class. So what I can do now is AUV key dot, and then I call the function add light group, and the light group is my light group, which I'm looping over, right? So this should return, or just should store this updated expression into this property LPE group. So all I got to do now in the end, instead of setting the LPE, I set the LPE as my expression. So this would now be AUV key dot LPE group instead. I hope this makes sense. It might be a bit complicated, but just run over this a few times and I'm pretty sure you will understand what's happening here. So let's just run this and see what we get. I just execute the whole thing and hit play. So it did something. So I got 4 AUVs and it actually did the trick. So L.fill is for my fill AUV, key is for my key AUV, and it seems like it's working just fine. So let's just save this, not the script, the scene, and let's just run this guy and see what we get. So I think I need to do a few adjustments. This should be main. We want to render half. Also the resolution, the whole thing broke. It's a bit annoying. So this was 1300 by 1000. This was on 3, I think. Okay. Let's just try it again. Okay. So let's just make this a bit bigger. Sorry, it just switched screens somehow. Okay, there we go. That's bigger. And let's see if it works. So fill does work. So it does definitely work. So now you can see what we did here. We created a simple for loop and it's just creating all this stuff for us on the fly, right? So obviously there is now a bit more work involved. So for now, let's just delete these guys, the AUVs. And now what you see is I need to add more of these guys, more outputs, which I need for this shot, right? I want to have the beauty. So let's just add a few more. Let's just do copy and enter. Let's just indent this guy. They don't match, obviously. Okay, so we have beauty. We have definitely a diffuse. And what else do we need? We want diffuse indirect. We don't have scatter. We want specular. Oh, snap. Okay. So I said diffuse indirect. We want to have specular and specular indirect. And then we want to have code and code. Oh, again. Code and code indirect. So let's just rename them. So diffuse. You can just, I don't know, call them whatever you want. Indirect. Then we have, let's say specular. And indirect, and I said code and code. Right, so this is now, obviously I need to update the expressions. I will just copy them because I'm lazy and I don't want to waste your time as well, so that's that. So this would be the diffuse LPE. And then we have the indirect diffuse as well. In the previous tutorial, I'm going over them in detail. So if you don't know what this cryptic code is, please check out MtoA 5.16. And after that you should get what I'm doing here, especially the TS syntax in the front. That's something a bit more special, which I went through in 5.16 in detail and explained the benefits of having this TS array path in there. Anyways, so this is more a rudimentary implementation of this, just because, wait, I'm missing this guy. Just because I'm doing like string replacements, it's not very robust. So if you have any array type which is L dot, it will also replace it. So it works for this idea. So it might be robust enough, but it's always a hard tell. So if you have a different setup, it might break. But it works for my simple one. So what I'm talking about is this L dot. I'm searching for this L dot string in any of these LPE strings. And if it finds them, it should replace them with L dot and then whatever I'm passing through as a light group name. And let's just see if it works, right? So I ran the script accidentally a few times, so let's just delete those AUVs. Let's just save the scene. So what I would expect now is for each of these AUVs, I would expect to get 4 separate AUVs per each light I have, or let's not per each light, per each light group, right? So I would guess, let's just hit Control A and Control Enter, and let's see if something happened. So something did happen. If you catch it already, you're good. The problem is I hard-coded beauty at the bottom, so that's why they're all called beauty. And this should be AUV key dot name, I think, because that's the object. So name would be this guy here. So let's just try this again, and there we go. So now we have fill beauty, fill code indirect, blah 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 blah, and then we have key blah 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 blah, kick da da da, and we've got all these guys. And let's see if my expressions work. They have ribbon here, they've got kickers there, so it seems to be just fine. Let's run and test it. Right, so this is what I got, and at first glance it looks all good. So let's see what the AUVs do. So you can see they're all populated just fine in here. So let's check the fill beauty, and it seems like this is what I would expect. So let's just I'm hitting the keyboard down arrows now just to cycle through my AUVs. So yeah, this looks fine. I think it's working just good. So this is my diffuse contribution from the fill light. There's no diffuse indirect, or just slightly. You can see there is something, but it's just very slightly. We're still on the fill spec with indirect spec, and this is now the key beauty light. And then for each key light group, we go through all the AUVs. Diffuse contribution, specular contribution. You can see the nice chip or edge breakup, whatever, with the curvature. This is my kicker light, and all these things work just fine. And I hope you can see the benefit of just being able to just quickly write a little script which does all the hard work. And at some point I will make maybe a little light shader toolbox for this guy. I started actually already to have the interface, so I'll just make it a bit nicer, so it will be easier to just use the UI and just run it, and then it should work. But obviously being able to code is helpful, and you can see just by creating a little class, defining the name and LPE, and doing some little function in here, I am just looping over these guys, and I'm getting all the scene lights and all the simple stuff. And at the bottom I just have my for loop, which does the AOV creation and setting the LPE path. That's all there is to it. There's nothing really too crazy actually, and it's like a really time saver. And let's say you want to have first of all, let's say we got to change the group name, so we just say it's called kick again, and let's say we just want to add a top down light, and just duplicate this kick light and call this top, and just look through this light. Look through selected, just go from the top here. I'm not sure how it will look now, but I'm just creating a top down light and changing the group to be top. Let's just use a blue color for this. And I guess I deleted all the AUVs. So essentially all I got to do now is run the script. And we should have the top stuff in here, and it's just working out of the box. And let's see if it does work. Progressive on, and it's definitely different. So let's just check the top beauty. And there we go. This is how it works. And it's just one-click solution. Otherwise, you would have to do it like 10 times, click through the UI, and yeah. Let's see how the diffuse works. All pretty nice and dandy. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something from this. Leave a comment below if you actually like this more technical stuff, because I honestly think it's very helpful to at least understand some scripting. It gets you somewhere a lot faster, and it just helps you understand things, how software packages are built or whatever. It's really helpful, and I would recommend you guys learning this. And yeah, feel free to leave any questions in the comments. And obviously, if you don't know it yet, I am on Slack, and it's just you can just copy or just go to lightshader.slack.com, or you can go to if you're not in there yet, you can just go to lightshader.de. Not lightshade, not sure what that is. Lightshader.de. And at the bottom of that page, you have a Slack button, which will give you an invite, and you can join this group. It's growing slowly, and lots of people in here giving feedback, asking questions. It's a very nice collaboration. And obviously, if you want to get these light shader plugins in Maya, they are also available on lightshader.de under the download again. Under the download section. So in here you get directed to the Bitbucket page where you can download the toolbox and install it. It should be very simple to do, hopefully. Yeah, I think that should cover that. So now you know how to set up light path expressions if you checked MtoA 5.16, and you know how to set up light groups manually by hand using the UI and typing the stuff in manually. And you now know the fancy way of doing a little 40-line code. I guess I could optimize it to be even shorter, to create a nice dynamic way of creating AUVs and having them output each AUV per light. So thank you guys for tuning in, and as always, I'm happy to see you in the next tutorial. Thank you guys. Bye.